Section 20 of Tribal Custom and Anglo-Saxon Law. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Tribal Custom and Anglo-Saxon Law by Frederic Seebohm. Chapter 8. The Tribal Customs of the Oldest Scandinavian Laws. Part 2. The Wergelds of the Gulathing and Frostathing Laws. In approaching the consideration of the Scandinavian custom as to Wergelds and the structure of tribal society as disclosed in the ancient laws, I do it with great diffidence, especially as, for the translation of Old Norse, I am dependent on others. On the whole, it seemed best to concentrate attention upon the Gulathingslag as the oldest of the Norse laws. The Danish and Swedish laws in the Grogos of Iceland no doubt under competent hands would yield valuable additional evidence, but the oldest of the Norse laws may probably be fairly taken as the most representative of early northern custom, and at the same time most nearly connected with the object of this inquiry. Geographically, the Gulathing law was in force in the southern portion of Norway. It seems to have embraced, in about the year 930, 3 and afterward 6 fylkes or districts, each with its own thing and local customs. In this respect it resembled the Frisian and Saxon laws, both of which recognized, as we have seen, the separate customs of tribal divisions contained in a larger district over which the laws had force. The Gulathing law must therefore be regarded as in some sense a compilation or collection of customs, rather than one uniform law. For instance, there are 3 or 4 separate descriptions of the Wergeld and the modes of its payment and receipt. One of these is avowedly of later date. The older ones may probably describe local variations of general custom belonging to one or another of the divisions, and even these bear marks of later modification and additions. As usual, the introduction of Christianity was the occasion and perhaps the cause of the compilation, and therefore from the time of the formation of dioceses by King Olaf, A.D. 1066 to 1093, ecclesiastical influence must be expected. But on the whole, this Gulathing law presents in some points a far more interesting and instructive picture of social conditions resulting from tribal custom than the laws of other tribes already examined of much earlier date. The next important of the ancient laws of Norway is the Frostathingslag belonging to the more northerly district of Trondheim. Without pretending to have made it the subject of special study, I have here and there found it useful in elucidation of the Gulathing law, and as showing that tribal custom, though with local variations, was in force over a wider district than that under the Gulathing law. The question of the structure of tribal society and the division of classes in Norway may be most conveniently approached from the point of view of the ret, or personal right, somewhat analogous to the Irish honour price and the Welsh sarad. Both in the Gulathing law and in the Frostathing law, this personal ret lies at the root of the graduated payments for insults, wounding, and homicide, and the statements of it are practically identical in the two laws. They are as follows. Gulathing, 200. Lacing, 6 oars. Lacing son, 8 oars. Bondet, 12 oars. Haldman, 24 oars. Lendman and Stellaire, 48 oars. Frostathing, 1035. Lacing before Freedom's Ale, 4 oars. Lacing after Freedom's Ale, 6 oars. Lacing son, 8 oars or 1 mark. Rikstan, 12 oars. Ardbordenman, 12 oars or 2 marks. Haldman, 24 oars or 3 marks. The chief difference is that the Frostathing law divides the lacings into 2 classes, a significant point on which important considerations turn. The things for which full ret was paid may be described as insults. If a man were knocked down, even if he fell on his knees, or if his mustache were seized with hostile hand, or if a man were called a mare or bitch, these were insults for which full ret was to be paid. The payments for inflicting serious wounds, sar, were regulated in the same gradations according to rank as the ret, but were threefold in amount. These payments were made in bugs, or rings, each of 12 oars of silver. Gulathing law, 185. Lacing, 1 ring. Lacing son, 2 rings. Bondet, 3 rings. Odel-born man, 6 rings. Lendman and Stellaire, 12 rings. Jarl, 24 rings. King, 48 rings. Frostathing law, 953. Lacing, 2 rings. Rikstan, 3 rings. Arbor in man, 4 rings. Hald, 6 rings. Lendman, 12 rings. Jarl, 24 rings. King, 48 rings. These were the penalties paid by the person inflicting the wound, i.e. 3 times his own ret, and besides this he had to pay sarbot according to the extent and character of the wound, as in other laws. He also had to pay the healing fee of the injured person. Passing from insult and wounds to homicide, throughout the Gulathing law the halt or odal-born man is taken as the typical tribesman. His wergeld is described, and then the wergelds of other classes are said to vary according to the ret. But before we consider the wergelds, it must be remarked that here, as elsewhere, there is no wergeld for a murder within the family. In clause 164, under the heading of a madman's manslaying, is the following. Now, if a man has done the slaying of a madman, if a son slays his father, or a father his son, or a brother his brother, or any of his sisters and brothers, or a child slays its mother, or a mother her child, then he forfeits the inheritance he ought to take. The one next to him in kin takes that inheritance, and the king shall have it rather than he. But he shall stay in the land, and be shriven, and keep all that is his. In the Gulathing law, the kindred within which there is no wergeld is thus the actual family, and it is in full accord with the instance in Beowulf in which the old father is represented as having to put up with the presence of a son by whose arrow another of his sons had been slain, such a crime being one which under tribal custom could not be avenged. Turning now to the amount of the wergeld of the Gulathing law and the Frostathing law, it must again be remarked that there are in these laws varying accounts of it. In the first place, there are some avowedly of later date than others. Thus, in Frostathing 6.1, the description of the wergeld is commenced as follows. Here begins and is told that which to most is dark, and yet many had need to know, because difficult matters increase among men, and those grow fewer who both had the wits and the good will for it. How to divide the fixed boats if they are adjudged, for it is now more the custom to fix the boats, how many marks of gold shall be paid on account of him who was slain, and the cause of that is that many know not what the lawful boat is, and though they knew it, few will now abide by it. But the Frostathing book divides the lawful boat to every one according to his birth and rank, and not those boats which they that sit in courts and make terms of peace put too high or too low. Here the writer clearly refers back to the ancient Frostathing book as the authority for the lawful boat, but on examination he seems to add certain additional boats which the courts now include in the round amount of so many gold marks awarded by them in each case as it comes before them. The writer takes first the case of an award of 6 marks of gold and describes how it is to be divided, and then the case of 5 marks of gold, and so on. The division is throughout made in silver marks, ors, ortugs, and penningar. But when the items are added up, the total in silver, divided at the ratio of 1 to 8, brings back the result as nearly as may to be the number of gold marks from which the division started. Thus, in the clause describing the division of the wergeld of 6 marks of gold, the silver items add up to 48 marks exactly, and the division of this by 8 brings back the amount to 6 marks of gold. And so, in the clause dividing 5 marks of gold, the items seem to add up to 1 ortug only less than 40 silver marks, and again a division by 8 brings the amount sufficiently near to 5 marks of gold. In each case, however, the writer adheres to the same scheme of division. When he has 6 gold marks to divide, he first assigns 18 silver marks to boga men, i.e. the near group of kinsmen of male descent on the paternal side only, and then he adds half as much, i.e. 9 marks, to a group of nefgildi men, among whom are included, with others, the kinsmen of descent through females on both paternal and maternal sides, so that these 2 groups of Buga men and Nefgildi get 27 marks. In all cases, he makes the group of Nefgildi receive only half the amount received by the Buga group, the whole amount being reduced according to the number of gold marks to be divided. After the amount allowed to these 2 groups, the remainder is made up of additional payments, some of which he expressly declares were not included under old law. Thus, in clause 6, he adds an amount which he says was not found in the old Frostathing book, and justifies it by saying that there would be danger to the slayer if it was not paid. And so again, in clause 9, there are additions for half-brothers, sons, etc., of the same mother. And these additions are included in the 6 marks of gold according to new law. Evidently, therefore, we must not take these wergelds of 6 and 5 marks of gold with their divisions as representing the ancient customary wergelds of this class, or that in the social scale, but rather as showing the extent to which the system of wergelds had become somewhat arbitrarily expanded and elastic in later times. The total amount, with additions, was apparently increasing as time went on. As in the Frostating Law, so also in the Gulathing Law, clause 316, page 104, there is a statement of wergeld, avowedly of a late date and added under the name of Bjorn Morrison, who lived about A.D. 1223. And this, too, seems to belong to a time when the amount of the wergeld was awarded by some public authority in so many marks of gold. He takes the case of a wergeld of 6 marks of gold and shows how it ought to be divided, and then the case of a wergeld of 5 marks of gold and shows how that should be divided, what each shall take of 5 marks of gold, and so on, just as was done by the writer in the Frostating Law. One might have supposed from this that, as the method of awarding fixed amounts and the amounts to be divided in gold marks were the same, so the groups and the persons included in them would have corresponded also. But they differ considerably. Bjorn Morrison, up to a certain point, follows the same scheme as the writer in the Frostating. In his division of 6 marks of gold, he, too, draws a line at the amount of 27 marks, and he also divides this amount into thirds and gives 2/3 to one group and 1/3 to the other. The son of the slain and the brother of the slain form the first group and take 18 marks, and a second group take 9 marks, the two together taking 27 marks. The group who together take 9 marks, like the Nefgildi men of the Frostating, embraces, however, by no means the same relatives as are included in the latter. The only persons included are the father's brother and his children, i.e. first cousins or bro-rungs of the slain, but among them are included the sons of concubines and of female first cousins. And after the mention of these is the statement, all that these men take amounts to 27 marks and 2 aurar. Out of the remainder of the 6 gold marks or 48 silver marks, other relations take to the 5th man on the male line and the 6th on the female line. Bjorn Morrison seems, like the writer in the Frostating Law, to have had to some extent a free hand in the division. It is clear that there was much variety in the course adopted. Nor does he seem to have been by any means so systematic and accurate as the other writer. The silver amounts, when added up, do not so accurately correspond with the 6 gold marks to be divided. We turn, then, from these later statements to what seems likely to be an older statement of the Norse wergeld, that is, which commences at clause 218 of the Gulathing Law. It describes the division of the wergeld of a hald or odel-born man, and it begins with the explanation that the mansgild or wergeld decreases and increases from this as other rents. It describes the various amounts both in silver marks and in cows, which the other statements do not, and this, so far as it goes, is a sign of antiquity. In clause 223 is inserted a statement of the various things in which wergelds may be paid. The only item the value of which is given is the cow, which is to be taken at 2½ oars if not older than 8 winters, and if it be whole as to horns and tail, eyes and teats, and in all its legs. And the silver value of the cow, 2½ oars, is the one used in this older description of the wergeld. The wergeld, according to this statement, consists of booga payments and oopnam payments. The first are received in 3 boogs or rings, thus: Hoofutboog, taken by the son and the father of the slain, 10 marks or 32 cows. Broturboog, taken by brother, or if none, by the son of the slain, 5 marks or 16 cows. Brorungsboog, taken by the father's brother's son, i.e. first cousin of the slain, 4 marks or 13 cows minus half an oar. Total 19 marks or 60 cows plus 2 oars. To this is added for women's gifts, i.e. the mother, daughter, sister, and wife of the slain, or in default to the son of the slain, 1 mark or 3 cows plus half an oar. Total 20 marks or 64 cows. After this statement is the declaration, now all the boogs are counted. A clause here is interpolated, changing the point of view so as to show how and by whom on the slayer's side the same 3 boogs are paid. The slayer shall pay to the son of the dead the hoofutboog. The slayer's brother, if he has one, shall pay to the brother of the dead the brotherboog, otherwise the slayer shall pay it. The broderung of the slayer, if he has one, shall pay to the broderung of the slain the broderungsboof, otherwise the slayer shall pay it. He is reckoned the son of the dead who takes the gield, whether he is father or brother or however he is related. Then follows the declaration, now all the books are separated. It seems clear then that the slayer was in the last resort responsible for the whole of these book payments, as it was the son of the slain who would take any part of them lapsing through failure of the designated recipients. The small payments to the mother, daughter, sister, and wife included in the book payments are evidently additional and exceptional payments in regard to close sympathy. The slayer does not make these payments. It is expressly stated that they are made by the kinswomen of the slayer, but they are included in the even amount of 20 marks or 64 cows. The recipients of the 3 books, it will be seen, were limited to the nearest relatives on the paternal side, fathers, sons, brothers, and first cousins, with no descent through females, while the recipients in the next set of groups, or utnams, include also relations through females, but, again, only males receive. There is, however, one exception. In clause 231 is the following. All those women who have sons are in the shuk, suit, and sisters capable of bearing sons. They shall all be held to have an equal part in it till they are 40. Evidently they partake, as under Cymric custom, only in respect of possible sons who, if born, would partake themselves. Indeed, the sons only appear in the list of receivers, and in no case the mother, except among the women's gifts included as above in the booth payments. Clause 224 describes the utnam set of recipients as under. It will be seen that they include descendants of great-grandparents, but no more distant relations. Saktal of utnams or groups outside Buga men. First utnam. The slain person's father's brother, i.e. uncle, brother's son, mother's father, daughter's son. Each gets a mark from the slayer if a hald be slain, and this amounts to 4 marks. Second utnam. The slain person's father's brother's son, bruerum, brother's daughter's son, mother's brother, sister's son, sistling, father's sister's son. Each gets 6 oars from the slayer if a hald be slain, and this amounts to 3 marks 6 oars. Third utnam. The slain person's mother's sister's son, sistrung, bruerung's child, father's bruerung, mother's mother's brother, sister's daughter's son. They get half a mark from the slayer if a hald be slain, probably half a mark each, i.e. 2 marks 4 oars, making the total of utnams 10 marks 2 oars. Then follows the declaration, now all the utnam men are counted. If we add up the amount of the 2 sets of payments, the result will be as follows. The 3 buga payments of near relatives with addition of women's gifts, 20 marks or 64 cows. The utnam payments within descendants of paternal and maternal great-grandparents, 10 marks 2 oars or 32 4/5 cows. Total 30 marks 2 oars or 96 4/5 cows. As in the Frostating law, the Nefgildi men took as a group an amount equal to 1/2 the amount of the Buga group, so here the utnam men do the same. Evidently this is the intention. Now if we may take the Buga payments and the utnam payments as representing an intention 30 silver marks or 96 cows, then, at a ratio of 1:8, the 30 silver marks equaled, in wheat grains, exactly 200 Merovingian gold solidi, and this may have been the ancient wergeld of the hald. There is, however, in clause 235 a further payment mentioned extending to the 15th degree of kinship, and amounting to about 1 mark and 3 oars. Possibly, though I hardly think it likely, this formed a part of the original wergeld, and if it be added, it would increase the wergeld to 31 marks, 5 oars, and at 2½ oars to the cow the wergeld would be increased to 101 1/5 cows. If we might take this as roughly aiming at the round number of 32 marks and 100 cows, the wergeld of the hald would be, at the ratio of 1:8, 4 gold marks or 100 cows. i.e. in actual weight, the heavy gold mina of 32 Roman ounces, which under Greek usage was divided into 100 staters or ox units. The confusion between 96 and 100 cows is so likely a result of the application of Roman methods to the division of the mina that we need not regard it. That the one or the other of these amounts may have been the original wergeld of the hald, representing originally 100 cows, is consistent at least with widely spread tribal usage. This view is confirmed by the fact that the further payments mentioned in the Gulathing are distinctly abnormal ones, and so presumably added at a later date like those mentioned in the Frostating law. We are justified in so considering them because in the laws themselves the persons to whom they were made are expressly called sok akar, or additional persons in the sok or suit. And when we examine them further we find that they were hardly likely to have been included among the original recipients of the Wergeld. Among those of clause 236 are the thrall-born brother and thrall-born son of the slain, and the half-brother by the same mother, and clause 239 extends the number to the son-in-law, brother-in-law, stepfather, stepson, oath brothers, and foster brothers. Evidently in these exceptional cases the rules of strict blood relationship have been broken away from, and additions have been made to the normal Wergeld to stay the vengeance of persons sufficiently nearly connected in other ways to make them dangerous if left unappeased. It was probably these additional payments, added from time to time in contravention of the strict rules of blood relationship, which caused the uncertainty of the later laws, and led to the new system of awarding a round number of gold marks as the total Wergeld, included in which were additions intended to meet the introduction of half-blood and foster relations, and others the risk of whose vengeance it seemed needful, apparently in later times, to buy off. Returning, then, to the original Wergeld of the Hald without these additions, we have seen that it consisted of two sets of payments, Buga payments and Upnam payments, and possibly the small addition of those of more distant relations. Now in the Gulathing law there are two other descriptions of the amount of the Buga payment, and it will be useful to examine them. The first is to be found in clauses 179 and 180. In clause 179, the payment for cutting off a hand or foot and for striking out an eye is said to be half a giold, and it is added, "But if both hand and foot be cut off the same man, he is worse living than dead, and is to be paid for as if he were dead." And then in the next clause, under the heading About Giold, is the following. Now shall be told payments in Gula. A Hald shall be paid for with 18 marks of lawful orar. Starting from this, the payment shall increase or decrease as other wrets. Now it would seem that this payment for the death of a Hald was not the whole Wergeld, but only the Buga part of it. No details even of the Buga payments of 18 marks are given in this clause. It seems to be inserted in this place simply with reference to the full limit of payments for injuries. Liability for wounding, under Cymric custom, was confined to the kinsmen of the Gweli, and so it may well be that under Norse custom it was confined to the Buga group. But the amount in this clause is only 18 marks, while that of the Buga payments of the Wergeld we have just been considering, as probably the earlier one, was 20 marks. How is this to be accounted for? The answer surely must be that 18 marks of Charlemagne, reckoned in wheat grains, were exactly equal to the 20 of the Roman or Merovingian marks of the earlier period. The other statement alluded to is also a statement avowedly of the Buga payments, and begins with almost the same words. Now the giold for the Hald shall be told. In this case the details are given, and the detailed payments add up between 18 and 19 marks, and yet the total is given as a little more than 20 marks. This statement differs from the older one in its divisions, but it has an air of antiquity and reality about it which suggests that it may represent a local custom actually in force. Little touches of picturesque detail seem to bring it into contact with actual life, and to show how local custom might work out a common object by its own peculiar method. It meets us abruptly in clause 243 under the heading On Bugar, and commences thus. Now the giold for the Hald shall be told. 6 marks of 12 ells to the oar in the head book, 4 marks in the brother's book, 2.5 marks in the brorung's book. It then introduces quite another element, that is the tryggvakup, true spying. 2 tryggvakup shall go with every book. Each tryggvakup shall be 1 1/5 oars. Tryggvakup shall go between buchamen. In the next clause it is explained that this peace price, sakdarkup, is paid when the kinsmen come together to make peace, and that 3 marks are also paid as skoarkup, forest price, i.e. payment to release the slayer from being a skuarmar, or outlaw living in the forest. The slayer pays a book to the son of the dead, and 2 truce prices, one to the brother and the other to the brorung of the dead. And the slayer's brother pays a book to the brother of the slain, and again 2 truce prices, one to the son of the slain and the other to the brorung of the slain. And the brorung of the slayer pays a book to the brorung of the slain, and again 2 truce prices, one to the son and the other to the brother of the slain. All this is for peace buying, setarkup, when the kinsmen are met together to make peace. Then in clause 245 the women's gifts are described. The slayer, his mother, his daughter, and his wife each give a gift of 1 1/5 ore to the wife, mother, and daughter of the slain, making 12 gifts. The sister of the slayer gives a half gift to the sister, wife, daughter, and mother of the slain, 2 gifts, and the slayer, his mother, wife, and daughter each give a half gift to the sister of the slain, making the number of women's gifts 16 in all. The amounts thus stated add up as follows. Book payments, 12 marks, 4 ores. 6 truce payments, 7 1/5 ores. Forest price, 3 marks. 16 women's gifts, 2 marks, 3 1/5 ores. Total 18 marks, 6 2/5 ores. The amount aimed at seems to be 18 marks, the upnam payments being 9 marks, and yet the total is stated as follows. Now with buga and with trigvakup and skoarkup and women's gifts it is 20 marks and 2 2/5 ores. Absolute accuracy need not be expected, but there must be a reason for the difference between 18 and 20 marks, between the detailed payments and the total, and it is difficult to suggest any other than the one already mentioned. The total amount of the buga payment seems to be the same in this as in the other statement, but a new element is introduced with an obvious and interesting object. The buga men, as before, consist of 3 groups. The slayer pays the buga of the son to the slain, and appeases the other 2 groups by payment to each of them a truce price, so that to all the 3 buga groups of the relations of the slain he has acknowledged his wrong and desire to make composition. And so, in each case, the representative of the other 2 groups of slayers' relations paid the buk to the corresponding group of the relatives of the slain and a truce price to the other 2, so that no relation of the slain could after this point to any individual as not having joined in the payment to himself or his group. The women most deeply concerned on both sides are also present at the gathering, and each of those connected with the slayer is prepared with her gift of 1 1/5 ores for the corresponding relative of the person slain. Women's gifts were included in the buga payments in the other statement also. The clauses relating to the buga payments are followed by 3 others, headed on succor, and the further recipients of Vorgeld, as before, seem to be divided into upnams and saukukar, but in this case there is a strange mixture of the 2. The mother's brother and the sister's son are excluded from the upnams to make way for the half-brother by the same mother of the thrall-born son. Clause 246, on succor, gives 12 ores to each of the following, who in clause 250 are called upnam men. Father's brother, 12 ores. Brother's son, 12 ores. Brother by the same mother, 12 ores. Thrall-born son, 12 ores. Daughter's son, 12 ores. Mother's father, 12 ores. Total, 72 ores, or 9 marks. So that the buga and upnam payments, 2/3 and 1/3, added together once more make a normal Vorgeld of 27 marks, that is, 30 of the Merovingian standard. Then clause 247, further on succor, gives to mother's brother 9 ores, sister's son 9 ores, thrall-born brother 9 ores, father's sister's son 6 ores. And in clause 248, further on succor, a thrall-born father's brother and a thrall-born daughter's son by a kin-born father take each a mark. The traditional Vorgeld seems, therefore, once more to be 27 marks of Charlemagne or 30 Merovingian marks, and the additional payments appear to be saukukar. But the upnam group in this case includes the brother by the same mother and the thrall-born son, leaving outside a saukukar the mother's brother and the sister's son and the father's sister's son, along with the thrall-born brother. It is not within the scope of this inquiry to attempt either to explain or to explain away, as of no moment, the variations in the persons included under the various schemes in the groups of buga and nefgildi or upnam men. Even such a question as that of the exclusion from the upnam group of the mother's brother and the sister's son, to make way for the illegitimate half-brother and thrall-born son, is not necessarily to be disposed of as a later alteration in favor of those illegitimate birth. For the Cymric precedent might well lead us to an opposite conclusion, inasmuch in the laws of Howell, in spite of strong ecclesiastical opposition, the ancient pagan custom of admitting illegitimate sons to share in the father's inheritance was defended and retained as too fully established to be given up. Looked at from the point of view of the feud, they were naturally more on the spot, and therefore of much more moment than the mother's brother or the sister's son. Professor Vinogradov has suggested that the evidence of Norse and Icelandic Wergeld seems to point to an original organized group of agnates who were Buka men and formed the kernel of the kindred liable for Wergeld, as contrasted with after additions of relations on both paternal and maternal sides, and others more or less nearly concerned. The Cymric precedent would lead us to expect to find thrall-born sons as well as legitimate sons among the Buka men, without any special mention as such. Under Christian influences, they may have been excluded from this group to find a place ultimately, sometimes with special mention, in the Utnam group. It may or may not have been so, according to the stage of moral growth arrived at in the particular case of this tribe or that, at the particular period in question. Hence, although under Norse custom the amount of the normal Wergeld of the Hald may have been constant, the way in which it was divided and the group responsible for its payment may well have varied from time to time and in different districts. It has already been noticed that even under the later methods of awarding as Wergeld an even number of gold marks, both the Gulathing and the Frostathing laws, in the case of the award of 6 marks of gold, draw a line, the one at 18 and 27 marks, and the other at 20 and 30 marks, as though these amounts had a strong traditional sanction. Even in the case of the lower awards, the scheme of division being the same with proportionately lessened figures, this portion of the Wergeld was always divided into 2/3 of Buka payments and 1/3 of Nefgildi or Utnam payments. This seems to be strong evidence that, although the persons forming the groups may have differed, the two groups formed originally an inner and an outer kernel of the Wergeld proper, the additions to which may fairly be regarded as Saukukar. The repetition of evidence in both laws that the Buka payments of 2/3 was followed by another third of Nefgildi or Utnam payments, when connected with the further fact that the two together made an amount which was, at the value of the cows stated in the laws, equated with 96 or 100 cows, seems to confirm the hypothesis that in this amount we have the normal Wergeld of the Hald. To Professor Vinogradov's suggestion that the Buka payments may have formed an original inner kernel of the Wergeld, we may therefore perhaps add that the Nefgildi and Utnam payments may have formed an outer shell of the kernel, and that both may have been included in the original normal Wergeld of 96 or 100 cows. Finally, if this may fairly be taken to be the Wergeld of the Hald, then, recurring to the repeated statement in the Gulathing law that the Wergeld of the Hald being told, the Wergelds of others varied according to the Ret, the Wergeld of the several classes in Norse social rank may, it would seem, with fair probability, be stated as follows. Lacing before freedom ale, Ret and silver ores, 4. Wergeld and silver ores, 40. Lacing after freedom ale, Ret and silver ores, 6. Wergeld and silver ores, 60. Wergeld and cows, 24 or 25. Lacing sun, Ret and silver ores, 8. Wergeld and silver ores, 80. Wergeld and cows, 32. Bonde, Ret and silver ores, 12. Wergeld and silver ores, 120. Wergeld and cows, 48 or 50. Arboren or Eitboren man, Ret and silver ores, 16. Wergeld and silver ores, 160. Wergeld and cows, 64. Hald or Odelborn, Ret and silver ores, 24. Wergeld and silver ores, 240. Wergeld and cows, 96 or 100. The significance of these gradations in the Rets and Wergelds of Norse tribal society will become apparent in our next section. End of section 20.